seeing we only have like...
Council?
Yeah, Seth calling in?
Okay.
No, he's not on the committee either, is he? Well, Matt's not here, Glenn's not here, Peg's not here, so I'm here. So I'm going to read these off and forward them to council tomorrow night because we don't have a quorum to have a vote. Any discussion on this one? I'm sure there isn't.
Not for the airport authority, no.
Okay. Next one I'm going to read on the record for tomorrow night's council meeting is I'm submitting the following individual for appointment to the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Council. And this is Mr. Thomas Repash from Bethlehem, PA. Mr. Repash is being considered for a term to begin effective upon County Council's resolution and to end July 1 of 2018. The resumes here. Anybody have any questions on this one? Questions, thoughts, concerns? All right, we'll move this one for tomorrow night, full council meeting approval. Next one I have here is recommendation for appointment to the Gaming Revenue and Economic Redevelopment Authority. The appointment of Donna M. Louder, 2145 Bethlehem, PA. Ms. Louder is being considered to represent Lower Saucon Township for a 5-year term from January 2017 to December 31, 2021. And Ms. Louder is here. And thank you for volunteering for that board. It's a lot of fun, right? We have a good time giving everybody money and saying no to others. So you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. I haven't been on there for 2 years now. As a council liaison, has it been a year or 2 years? Maybe a year. Yeah, 1 year. Well, hopefully they straighten that out, and you have money to even distribute to anybody. I'm sure the state legislator will get right on that for us. Any questions or concerns?
Just a comment. Thank you for showing. It's good to see people when we appoint them. I'm disappointed that the Sands has chosen not to follow the lead that several other casinos have done and continue with their host agreement fees. I don't know why, but they seem to be the lone holdout across the state. So I'm disappointed in that. I do hope that the state legislature makes that fix that needs to be done, and as part of that, my hope is that they don't swallow this and absorb it into the Commonwealth Financing Authority, because, I mean, we've virtually perfected the process that we use to distribute these funds, and it would be a shame if this were to go into the black hole that is the Commonwealth Financing Authority in Harrisburg. So two things. Again, I hope that the state squares it away and gets the law repaired, and I do hope that your authority continues with the good work that they've done. So good luck.
Hey, John, I'd like to say something, or actually, Ken.
Go ahead.
I went to Governor Wolf. He had a round table, and it was about everything, but a big part of it was the gaming. And so my take is not this was anybody else, but, you know, John, you don't understand, and you're upset with Sands for not giving them money. And my take is that the Sands is trying to protect themselves. They've given like billions to Northampton County and development, and there's a big push to have online legalized gambling. It's a big push for non-impacted counties to get monies, which is basically going to tax Sands more. And there's also a push, and Lisa Buscola stated this, in this fix, the funds are probably going to go to CFA. So I'm sort of thinking maybe the best thing is for the Sands to play hardball now to prompt the legislative to make quickly reenact what they've had instead of go out and reinvent the wheel. Reinventing the wheel probably is going to mean more taxes for the Sands, and according to Lisa, it's going to mean the money would no longer come to the county; it would go to the CFA. So there's two sides to that coin. I would absolutely love to see the money come in to us, no doubt about that. But I think that there's probably some politics involved in regards to make them act faster than later. And if they act faster, they'll try to recoup or reestablish what they've already established. So that's my take on it. And that thing what Lisa said about the CFA, that's not my take. That's what she said.
Anybody else like to comment about the Sands Casino? You know, I like to say that they are a poor corporate neighbor, and you know, there's two parts of this. There's this impact fees that they give, you know, for this board to give out, but there's also the host fees that the city of Bethlehem has for the police force and fire and ambulance, and they're there every day. I don't know how many times a day for problems, and by the casino not even wanting to fill that hole in the budget for the city, it's just, you know, there's no words for it. I don't know why Adelson's playing that track, and they're the most profitable casino in the state. And I understand them being taxed wrong. I know the law was written wrong, but they could at least fulfill that promise to the host city that's supplying them with fire response and police response and ambulance response and everything else that happens down there every day of the week that's directly impacted the city and all the police that are needed there. So we'll move along to the next thing here. It's a recommendation for reappointment to the Lehigh Valley Workforce Development Board, submitting the following individual for reappointment to Lehigh Valley Workforce Development Board, Incorporated. Ms. Hood's nomination letter and resume are attached. Reappointment business category, Constance Hood of Nazareth, PA. Ms. Hood is being considered for reappointment to continue to serve as a business representative to the term ending June 30th, 2018. This reappointment request is due to Pennsylvania state requirements for LVWDB members and Ms. Hood's recent job change. So I see no problem with that. We still don't have a quorum to recommend it, but I'll recommend it to council for tomorrow night. And the next thing on my agenda here is a demonstration of the Department of Human Resources local GovU system. And you're on. Al's on. Okay.
Good evening, Council. Actually,
Good,
I'm
Al.
here to apologize that there will be no demonstration tonight. We've run into a configuration issue, and we may be able to do it tomorrow. I'll try and get it rectified tomorrow during the day. But we couldn't do it now. It would disrupt your meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, is there anything else? Anybody else that wants to talk to Personnel Finance Committee for the night? Anything pertinent or we have to hear? Nothing? Okay. That's it. Adjournment.
Glenn not here? Or? No? Is he going to be here? Or? Want me to?
You can add Keats or
Oh, either one of three guys.
Sure. We'll convene the Finance Committee for January 18, 2017. Is there anybody here for the courtesy of the floor for the Finance Committee? Seeing no one, I'm going to ask John to lead the discussion on regarding the Allegheny County Tax Exemption Review Ordinance. John.
Okay, this was something that came up. Those of you that don't know, I'm on the CCAP Assessment and Taxation Committee, and from time to time we get ideas and examples of what other counties do. And this is one that came from Allegheny County, and one of the things that they struggle with is not-for-profits and assessment of property that is on or off the rolls. And one of the things that they did in order to maintain accurate records is to require that their assessment office check up on properties that are exempt every 3 years. This falls under what's called the Purely Public Charities Act, and I think we've talked about that here once or twice before. What it does, and I think the key part of this is, it's on the second page, it's Part B. They require that all properties granted tax-exempt status by the Chief Assessment Officer under the provisions of the Purely Public Charities Act shall be subject to a parcel review in accordance with the provisions in the Act at least once every 3 years. So what they do is they go out and their assessment office checks to make sure that, in fact, the tax-exempt status that is being granted is in fact valid. I know we went through a process several years ago. I think we went through that process here, and it had been a long time since it had even been looked at. So I presented this more as informational, and if anybody was interested in enacting such an ordinance here, I'd be more than willing to, have Phil take a look at it and have Linda draft something up. If it's not something anybody's interested in, we, just take it up as informational. But I do think that, short of, doing full reassessments, at least what this does is it keeps our eye on properties that are tax exempt, because when things change, like churches do close, schools are sold, so there are, Pius X is an example. So there are properties that are or were tax exempt, that the question is this something that we're interested in doing on a regular basis? Mr. Hunter, you want to just address it? Or?
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to point out that I don't know prior to the last time we did this, but I believe it was in 2015 we did go through every tax-exempt property. And some that we kept on and some that we took off. But I can't really tell you the exact date. I can have that for you tomorrow night if you like. But we did do a review of every property within the last 2 years. And, I think the recommendation that you're making is that we do this every 3 years, and I can make sure that, in that time frame that we can do that. But I just wanted to let you know that I don't know prior to that, but I do know that in 2000, I believe it was 2015, we did a review of every tax-exempt property for just that reason, because properties change owners and things of that.
Right, and 3 years isn't, that's just what Allegheny County decided to do. If people wanted to do it every 4 or every 5, there's nothing set in stone. But this is just a practice that they do in order to keep their role up to date. So
now, do they also check on the use of it, that it's being used as a nonprofit, or as part of the check, or yeah? Yeah,
there's a checklist. It's part of the Pure Public Charities Act, and there's a checklist, of items that the property has to be fulfilling in order to maintain the tax exempt status. And for what they do is every 3 years they review it, send out a notice, and check to make sure that whomever owns that property is still meeting the requirements under the Purely Public Charities Act.
I'd be interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Another thing that's interesting about that is two part of it. Is it a charity, an eligible charity under the Purely Charitable Act, and is the whole percentage of it under that act? Because the property may be, 50 acres, and there might be half of it that is and half that's not, and that's what this also covers. I suspect that what Jim did really has us covered, but it may not be, we're not all going to be here all the time in the future, so that probably would not be a bad thing to codify, so I'm interested in that.
Okay.
I don't see a downside to it, to be honest with you.
All right, well, we'll have Linda take a look at it and
just
Phil
one
review
example of that situation. You say a church has 10 acres, and the church is sitting on 2 or 3 acres, and the other, whatever number of acres that is being farmed, and they're earning income on that property. The church would still remain exempt, but the other property would not. So,
exactly.
Yeah, and we do have a checklist, Matt, so, everything is, gone through, but.
May I ask Jim a question? Jim, just one question. While we're on this subject, I apologize, it's a little off. One thing I was going to ask also was, I don't know if this is accurate, but I heard we have about $2 million in delinquencies and taxes in Northampton County. Is that correct?
I don't have that exact figure, but
I
can I'll confirm. You said $2 million?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, and that's what I thought I saw. But if you wouldn't mind looking into that, because if that is true, we also should pursue those types of things for the county also.
Okay.
Would you define delinquent taxes as you're thinking about them, Mr. Warner?
Delinquent tax, as far as I'm concerned, is someone that owes taxes for their properties for the county.
Beyond the normal.
Beyond the normal,
tax.
yes.
It's actually in the financial statement books that I think on average we probably carry about $3 million, and there's a line item in the financial records that tell you on an annual basis. I think year 1 would be $3 million. I think by year 3 we've collected over 98% of
Okay.
what would have been delinquent within that 2-year prior period. I'd have to look more specifically at it.
I was
But on
reading it,
average, and I'm talking in averages, but it's probably around $2.5 to $3 million, maybe as much as $3.5. Within the next year, we collect the majority of that typically, and then usually within the third year, we're down to just a very few dollars that actually go uncollected.
I had never
on the county.
really had any discussions as far as that particular item, and I thought it
Yeah,
would be a
it's,
good time to bring it up during the discussions early on.
Yeah, and it's in, and I'll pull out an example. I forget which financial document it is, but it's something we do track and report on an annual basis as part of the annual financial workup.
Okay.
I'm going to call Mr. Barron up and to talk about the controller audit reports, and then doing that, I'm also going to transition over this to Mr. Geisinger.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. If council would indulge me for just a second, two examples directly related to what Mr. Phillips and Mr. Warner were talking about. One of the most interesting examples of a nonprofit, I guess, catch that we recently made since I've been controller. Lehigh Valley Child Care is a nonprofit child care provider in the Lehigh Valley. They used to actually have a branch right outside of Lafayette College, and they rented a building from Lafayette College, two nonprofit entities. So you would think that the rent collected and that property would still be not for profit. But when one nonprofit rents to another, the rent paid is actually taxable and puts that property back on the tax rolls. So there are those little things that people might not think about, especially with like the land deals that go on down at the Sands Beth Works Now site between Arts Quest, the Levitt Pavilion, Beth Works, and all those entities that own land and transfer land. So it's always good to look at and revisit and have a checklist and all those different things. The other thing, Mr. Warner, I think one of the reasons we're not like Easton and a lot of the other municipalities is we don't send over our delinquent tax bills to a third-party collector. If after 2 years you don't pay your taxes, you're up for sheriff upset sale. So those, I think, Northampton County, particularly one of the lower tax bills that people get, if not the lowest on their property. But one of the things is there's always been this aggression to go after that money, and we don't continue. So if you don't pay, your property could get sold out from underneath you, which I think is something that folks don't really think about a lot. So I think that part of the reason we collect a lot of that money is that people, when it's about to be sale time, they come up with the money.
Yeah, I think part of this was something I read about, that you're actually posting in the newspaper. You're hearing listings of things of people that are back taxes, things of that nature, but I was surprised at the number. I was surprised at how high the number was on the taxes that were owed.
Yeah, I mean, and for us, it's never really been a big deal because a lot of those. So there's a particular property in Easton they owe a lot of back Easton property taxes. The property's been talked about for redevelopment. They owe a lot of city taxes. They even owe some state taxes on the businesses that used to be in there. But whenever that county upset comes in, that person is in the county office with cash, with a check to pay those taxes. So, which is it's amazing. So,
Okay.
To start my audit reports, the first one on the list, and I think I have them in order, because sometimes it doesn't translate from your agenda to my email in order. So, but the first one is the Record Improvement Automation Fund. We worked with the Register of Wills and Orphans in this audit, and pretty much everything was taken care of at the time that we did the audit. If you move to page 5, there's a lot of introduction and a lot of language about the civil Wills and Orphans Automation Fund, and the first thing for compliance is that we wanted to make sure that our recommendation was that the fund be kept in a separate account. So we wanted to make sure that that the fee schedules are put together, that everything is in a separate account. We found that the fees were collected appropriately, everything is charged appropriately, but that it is kept in a separate account. Those funds are used specifically for the office and used to improve records improvements and automation within that particular office. So it just gives us a little bit of a separation in our financial statements. It also helps us follow in the controller's office the money a little bit more easily. And oftentimes these record improvement funds are taken, improvements are made, and then county dollars are also added to it. There's often not enough money to make those big improvements. It's like a savings account over a period of time that sort of offsets what the county is, what the county ultimately has to pay to improve access to our records and access to the court records. So that was our major recommendation. And if you look at page 7, really two housekeeping matters. The first was an interest allocation, and then the sheriff gets a gaming authority grant. And we just want to make sure that those funds are kept separately and segregated. So again, that they're easier to track. You were talking about gaming money earlier. While we scrutinize the Sands Casino for not giving us money, when they do give us money from the Gaming Authority, we want to make sure that we do everything we can to account for it appropriately. And those things were fixed during the field work. So those things were just quickly changed over and accounted for appropriately in the system. Really simple fixes. Any questions?
No.
So the next litany of reports is really just a bunch of hotel taxes. So the long and short of it, you guys know what we do when we go in. The first one is the Comfort Suites. You guys know it well from Southside Bethlehem. So the Comfort Suites, that hotel was pushed off a little bit by our office because they were in receivership for a period of time. They probably the $1,300 bill, based on everything that you see here. It's not a very large hotel. Usually during Lehigh graduation, Lehigh Lafayette weekend is when you see the largest influx of people. And they owe us $1,300 over the time period we audited, and they're working on getting that together to pay us. So that was the Comfort Suites in Southside. Any questions about that? The next is the Holiday Inn Express. I believe this one is not the one that sits in Northampton County by the airport. This is the one that sits over in Easton right along 22. That was they owe us $198.11. Any questions about that? I'm sorry, $189.11. Now, the Town Place Suites in Easton is off of 248, over in that new shopping center there on your way to Gracedale and Nazareth when you get off of 33. They owe us $139.92. And again, these come from exemptions missed or not proper documentation. The Holiday Inn Express by the airport, the other one, we actually owe them $21.21. So they actually overpaid their hotel tax. And again, you win some, you lose some. The Courtyard by Marriott, I am not sure where this particular Courtyard is. They owe us $1,105.86. It's one of the larger, this is the one on Emmerich Boulevard. So this is the new one on Emmerich Boulevard in 33. Yeah, so this is a larger hotel that gets a lot of traffic from the hospital that's right there. And then the Grand Estonian Hotel and Suites in Easton. You will remember these were actually being sold. And then they weren't for sale as condos, and our office discovered they were being rented. they have they're doing a very good job over there with their exemptions. They do have some long-term folks over there that stay there for longer periods of time. We owe them $56.11. And then the Sands Casino Hotel, license 148. They owe us $1,006.13. That hotel is always tricky to audit, simply because they do have an agreement with the Sands Casino. Comped rooms do go in there, and since there's no consideration exchanged for those rooms that are from consumer to the vendor, there's not really hotel tax paid. Now, Bruce Haynes has come to me about this on a few occasions and said, look, the Sands Casino itself, out of their operating expenses, are actually paying the hotel. So therefore, there is a consideration that goes back and forth. I personally do not know how to handle that because it's a business transaction to reimburse for the rooms. So there could possibly be hotel tax that's due on that. It's sort of a gray area to delve into. So I throw this out to council as sort of like a discussion item. If you would like me to explore that further within this year, I would be happy to send auditors in to look at that. I don't know how cooperative the Sands Casino would be in sharing that financial information in their budget. I don't know what their regulatory agencies say they must share with us. But it might be a worthwhile cause to look at it. I don't know how many comped rooms there truly are, coupled with the exemptions, but it may be something that I could look into. And it is something that Mr. Haynes has brought up, and I think he makes a valid point because the Sands is then not having to pay in that fair share, and they do get the benefit of Discover Lehigh Valley, people coming to the area, and all those things from the hotel tax that's generated.
Mr. Warner?
I think we should find out how many comp rooms they do have. That could vary for all we know.
It probably does vary month to month.
And secondly, we should know the definition of how they define a comp room, because that's what Bruce is getting at, I'm sure.
Well, the definition in casino speak is I go to the casino, I gamble a lot, I get a free room. Yeah. Now, the hotel itself, from what I understand, is in fact compensated for that room because they are two separate entities. Even though they operate under the moniker of the Sands Casino, I believe it's two separate entities because the Sands is required by law to keep their gaming business separate from other business pursuits and entities, including the conference center that's there, the event center that's there, things like that. So,
well, maybe we should find out how comp rooms are handled via the tax records.
Well, it will come down to the fact of whether or not there is a financial transaction within, whether or not there's a transfer of funds from one entity to the other, or is there an agreement that X number of rooms will be given at zero charge or $1 consideration or some other nominal fee.
Correct, and I don't want to tip anybody off and say, well, you do it at $1, we get nothing.
Right.
Well, what is the true consideration back and forth that happens?
But I think you're only going to be able to. Well, even if there's a true market value to it, I think you're only going to be able to audit based on the actual consideration given.
And that is correct, because if you've ever gone into a hotel, it says what the fair market value of that room is, and most of us fall over because that's really not what we paid for that room, right?
It's my more government.
So, exactly.
Mr. D.
So like the Marriotts, that as a pilot, we always stay at the Marriotts, and quite often for family trips, we will use points to stay at. I think it's probably equivalent to the same thing. So we're not paying anything, but I'm sure the local hotel is getting something from Marriott proper. It's probably along the same lines.
Correct. And now,
is that tracked at all?
So what I know about Marriott, my brother works for Marriott in Quakertown, and I often stay when we go to dance competitions at the associate rate. So there are times I pay $39 or $45 a night for a room. Now, that being the case, the hotel tax is actually charged at the actual consideration for that room. So I only ever pay the hotel tax in those areas on the amount paid for the room.
Right. Now, when you say points, like there's no fees at all unless there's parking or something like that.
Exactly, and then I don't think there's consideration that passes through. So therefore, we lose out on some of those taxes. But the documentation is kept, and all that information is kept. So that being the case, I think that if there is consideration or some sort of financial transaction, even if it is on paper, I don't know how council would. And if it's not a lot of money, and the SAN says no, we're not paying this amount of money in hotel taxes to you, the issue may be, do you really want to go and fight this in court?
Yeah.
And so there's. I mean, I think it's a worthy exercise and worthy of our time in the controller's office. The concern that I would have is that we come back here. I could tell you what that amount of money is. Do you go after it?
Right. I think that's ultimately, though. I think what Mr. Warner's saying is we should at least have a feel for what that, if they're comping, if they've got 150 rooms in that hotel and they're comping 50 of them every night, then obviously there's a financial transaction to make up that
Somewhere in the
lack
tax records, someone has to have some kind of record of something, how it's handled on the books when they comp rooms for hotels. So.
Now, the other argument the Sands Casino could make in the alternative, and again, I'm not here to give them their arguments, but a lot of these oil and gas, or these fracking companies, they actually will rent entire hotels, which is great for the hotelier, but they rent them for 6 months at a time. Therefore, they're a long-term tenant, and the communities that have this hotel room tax do not collect a hotel tax because the whole hotel is considered a long-term tenancy. So if those 50 rooms are always on, like
if there are a block of rooms held by the casino to comp,
then they may be technically long-term tenants.
Right, which they could.
Well, so could some of the gambling.
Well, that is true.
Right.
So,
well, I think it would be a worthy exercise to look into, and we'll raise that to full council tomorrow night. Anybody have anything else for Mr. Barron on this? Okay.
Kirk Ridge Inn, one of the smaller hotels, they actually, in November and December, their remittance was not submitted by the 20th of the month, and they had penalties and fees of $12.89. That's not any mistakes or anything like that. It's just a check. We didn't get the check by the 20th of the month, so they do owe us for those penalties and fees. The next audit is the cash collection in the elections office. I think we scared the heck out of poor Dee when we asked to do this audit right before the election, or we let her know we were going to look at this right before the election. She's like, oh, please, not during the presidential election. Again, we did the testing over there. Deposits are not always made on the day cash is received, since the volume of the receipts does not usually get to $25 weekly. Obviously, there are busier times when they're collecting, fees for register of people running for elections, or, if people are photocopying petitions and things like that. The division doesn't have a bank account, and we were able to determine that deposits were not always made on a timely basis, and there is segregation of duties for cash. They actually do a very, very good job over there in that office collecting money. Any other questions? Yes.
The question I would have on that one is, I guess, why would you do the audit in a presidential year? Because that would be less, when there would be less transactions, versus in an odd year when you have all the local candidates running. Wouldn't that have made more sense?
The time period was the 10-month period for ending in 2016. So it did cover much of the fees in the beginning of the year for filing, because some of the filing fees do come here. We've looked at this before in odd year election years. It's just when it falls in the cycle. Okay. So that's the reason we look at it. It's also good to go in during that time period as well, when people are looking for copies of things, when bigger campaigns are actually coming in to get voter lists, walk lists, things like that.
Anybody else?
Okay. The next one is an audit that I don't know if this is going to It's basically a big algebra problem, so Mr. Kusick, the math teacher here, might enjoy this. You teach math, right? Is that okay? So this basically is the county's E911 system for the expenses that are paid. As you know, North Catasauqua, Bethlehem has its own system, and the borough of North Catasauqua and Walnutport do get services from Lehigh County. So they get a little bit of a tax break. And we usually, the rate was reduced, calculated for 2016, and those expenses are then usually made up in the next year's taxes. So as you find, the millage rate, I think, was 0.1 too high based on our calculations. So that will be made up in the next year's taxes. So the millage rate is usually adjusted based on these numbers. And again, depending on what the city of Bethlehem does, operating its own 911 center, we may have a much smaller math problem when it comes down to North Caddy and Walnutport in the future. Any questions about that? So I always laugh when this audit's done by Paul Albert in my office because he lives in North Catasauqua. No questions about that? Okay. Value Place, which is a long-term rental hotel in the Lehigh Valley, they owed us $224.72. We still look at them. Most of their stays do not go over 30 days, and they do pay us a considerable amount of hotel tax. Any questions about that?
Yeah, what is it? I've never heard of it.
The Value Place is actually, it's near the Archibald Johnston estate. It's a place. It's actually right out of the industrial park that's back in that area, so you could see it from 22.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before. All right, thank you.
Sort of off Broadhead.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
off 191.
Yeah. Okay, so the next audit is the Healthcare and Dental Self-Insurance Trust Fund. As you know, we look at the trust funds quite regularly just to make sure things are in order. Specifically this trust fund because the opt-out is paid out of this trust fund. So we looked at the policies and the procedure and the process related to opt-out. One of the things we did notice in the executive summary is that we found the amount budgeted per covered employee was $11,200 for these health care benefits was based on the logical data prepared by the actuary. The health care and expenses only amounted to $9,015 per employee, or about 80% of the budgeted amount. While it's good that the actuary expenses were significantly less than anticipated, funds of $2,185 per covered employee were committed in the budget that were not spent, which meant that $3 million went back to the year-end fund balance. So there was considerable underusage this year in the budget. That amount is something that the external auditors will look at. It seems like the actuarial report was done, again, on a logical basis within the means of the law. I'm no expert on the actuarial numbers, but $3 million is something that's going to raise the eyebrows of the external auditors, specifically new external auditors that come in. So basically, we budgeted a lot more for healthcare, which is a good thing, than we actually needed. I don't know the reason for that, but we should also watch in the future so that we don't get these hills and valleys where we end up having to put in $3 million for healthcare. So, yes,
Steve, forgive me for it may be a moot point, but it says here as of December 31st, 2015 on it.
Yes.
You did an audit recently. Is that what you talking about?
That's the year for the trust fund.
It was done in 2015.
Yes, the year end 2015.
Year end. So
yes.
we have to start another program for up till.
We usually look at this in every so often. So it depends on when the cycle comes up when we look at this. So usually it's within that 4-year term. We picked this length of time though. The issue and where I think this $3 million comes from, and where maybe the actuary was looking at the numbers, is when we changed our health care, there was a bit of a panic I know I made sure that if there were medical things I needed done before I had to pay that extra 10%, 20%, whatever the co-insurance was, we got it done. So you saw an increase in what people were using the insurance for. And then that sort of dropped off because people got what ailed them fixed. You know, for my wife, it was a new hip. So that being the case, I think that, you know, you're going to see that, and we should be careful in the future or make sure we communicate that to the actuary so we don't have these hills and valleys. So especially in a year where we're hit with a lot of, and we do have stop-loss insurance, so don't get me wrong, but we just want to make sure that we don't get hit with these hills and valleys.
Stop-loss insurance covers up to?
Sorry, you'd have to ask that question.
Okay.
I don't remember.
All right.
So
okay, I just thought I'd ask that because I know that we're coming up on some interesting months ahead.
Yes,
for healthcare.
We are, we are. Need I say more? So
But can we move? We'll move on then.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know what to say.
We'll just
we prepare for Obamacare and then no more. Maybe. Who knows? Sorry, I'm thinking of a funny joke.
No, let's move on.
Let's move on.
All right. So, employee opt-outs, specifically, the documentation for 25 of the payments was reviewed, and numerous items were noted. First of all, it's not completed. The forms were not required to be completed on an annual basis, but only when an employee first opts out of the health care or opts back in. I am somebody that this happened to. I opted out for a period of time, then I opted into it, and I had to fill out that form. The county currently requires that employees who opt out provide proof of insurance coverage to their spouse's insurance. If proof of other insurance is required for opting out, then forms should be updated annually. That was sort of the discussion item, and I think that's a good rule of thumb. The opt-out, one opt-out form was not signed or dated by the employee, more of a clerical error, but something that should be done. Payments for 6 employees who were members of the residual or corrections officers unit were made in 2016 at a rate of $1,500 instead of the rate of $1,200, which is what they're required to get. So they received $300 more than they were supposed to. This included some partial payments for those who opted out during the year.
May I ask how many people we had to pay out?
What was that?
How many people had to get the payout?
That I do not know.
Okay.
I don't have the supporting documentation with me. So I'm
you can
sorry.
get it to me.
I will let you know.
Thank you.
So, one employee signed an opt-out form in 2014 with an effective date of 12/30 on 10/28 of 14 with an effective date of 12/31. She worked all of 2015, but was only paid the opt-out compensation for 11 of those months. So there's a little bit of a odd situation there that had to be corrected. So our recommendation is that the opt-out option for employees who have their own health insurance is a good program. However, the program could be strengthened by requiring opt-out forms to be completed annually during the open enrollment period. And I think that's a good thing to do. That way you also have a solid number, and you check in with all your employees during that open enrollment period. Because a lot of times, like I didn't go to any of the meetings for open enrollment because I knew what our health insurance was going to be. There were no significant changes. But that way you check in with some of those folks and just make sure they're still opting out and they have other insurance coverage.
Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman, excuse me. President, Chairman. I didn't know who was running the meeting there for a while.
All right.
Is it AIG that's carrying
Some of
this?
us still work for a living. I was
That's
caught
that.
behind getting here.
Yeah, I hear you. Which corporation? Is it which AIG is still handling? Who's handling the health?
The
these
healthcare
programs right now?
Capital Blue.
Capital Blue. But is there an involvement with AIG? Help me out. AIG. It's a
Aegis.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's
Is that
the
the
gap
gap
insurance.
insurance? Okay,
So,
thank you.
gap insurance doesn't apply. It doesn't.
I got it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I was having trouble with the name.
That's right. Gap insurance doesn't apply in any of these cases.
Okay.
I get the gap insurance if I'm in the healthcare, and I have to submit those forms or share that with my doctor. But that doesn't apply here because anybody who opts out would not get that gap insurance either.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not
pertinent.
even
Never mind.
pertinent to this. Yes.
Fine. Thank you.
2 of the 22 disbursements that were examined were not supported by the signature of an individual authorized to approve invoices for that fund. There were 4 individuals in human resources and 2 in fiscal who were authorized to approve the invoices. Both of the disbursements were for legitimate invoices to Capital Blue and United Concordia, and the funds were wired to the appropriate vendor, but an authorized signature wasn't on there. Now, that might seem a little bit petty, and I understand that. But with all the scams going on, I mean, I got an email supposedly from John Brown. I know it wasn't from John, asking me if I could wire money and when I could do it. And anybody who knows the county knows I can't wire money. I have no authority to do that. So, therefore, I mean, somebody was farming information and saw controller by my name and executive by his. So, while you might not think that that's a good control, in this day and age, you just never know. I would think we would all be smarter than to fall for something like that, but there should be proper signatures on all those invoices from authorized people.
Agreed. Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarification. This is, it wasn't an incorrect payment. It was a union arbitration settlement. On that overpayment?
For the $1,200.
For the $1,200, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it should have been caught. And when we pay somebody too much money, we take it back. What was that? We did not.
That was an agreement.
No.
It was an arbitration.
It was agreement in the arbitration.
It's just a point of clarification.
Right.
The prison's contract said 1,200. Some of the other contracts said 15.
Okay.
So that was where we went into an arbitration, and we agreed to pay them the other $300.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yep.
My fault. My fault.
Okay. No, that's good. I'm glad. Thank you
year.
for both clarifying that.
It's a New Year's.
It's a new year.
All right. Recorder of Deeds Agency Fund. Manuals should be updated. We always look at the manuals, and we're going to perform a follow-up in 6 months. They're working on that. So they have a lot of other work to do. They have really good policies and procedures. They just need to be updated.
They need to be updated.
And we make sure that we keep up on that.
Yeah.
Lump sum leave time payouts. So we looked at this process. With regard to open items, the open pan project is closed, but we were unable to consider the use of the reverse pan, as it is called, due to security reasons. So they're working on, basically what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the process for the documentation, the policy and procedures is correct, so that the payout process for lump sums are very smooth, that we can track it all the way through the system, and that we're going to review that again in 6 months to make sure that that is the case. Any questions about any of that?
Anybody?
Any other questions for me?
Mr. President?
Yeah, just, as I asked you last meeting, we do have a new auditor this year. How goes it with the procedures moving forward?
Things are going great. Things in my office with getting bank confirms and moving forward to the processes that we undertake every year is going swimmingly well. The real work starts January 30th. The external auditors will be here that day. I have a meeting with them and my staff from 9 to 12. You have a meeting, I believe, at 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Frank coordinated all that. So the process is very much status quo, what we did before. The one good thing from Clifton Larson Allen is being able to automate all of our audit papers, so they'll be able to integrate into any system the external auditors will use. That being the case, once they give us what the risk tolerances are and the additional tests that we need to run, our audit programs look very, very similar. So they're going to accommodate to us, and I guess in the first year, and then add things into the future. And they're probably, as all first-year auditors do, they will probably go into additional risk assessments, things they look at. They will probably do additional testing. They'll probably pull larger samples. So you will get a lot more out of them in that first year. I think. And then after that, we would end up probably doing a lot more of that field work for them once they identify risks and things of that nature. Any questions? You look.
Talk to you later.
You look perplexed. Okay. I'll be around.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Barron?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Any other items to come before the Finance Committee at this time? Seeing none, we adjourn.
We've advertised that the capital projects would commence right after the finance, so we're going to move right into the Capital Projects and Operations Committee meeting for January 18th, 2017. I'm going to go to the first item, courtesy of the floor. Is there anybody who would like to talk about the capital projects? Hearing none, I'm going to ask Mr. Rugas to come up and talk to us. If you could, please start with the generators at the Government Center and then at Gracedale, and then go to bridges.
Okay, first off, thank you, Council. The generators that everyone sees that are outside, the smaller of the two is for the data center, and we are going to bring that online this coming Saturday morning, start at 0800. We have full buy-in from IT. Maintenance will be here. Our electricians will be on staff, along with Wind Gap Electric and Caterpillar Ransom, to confirm all the operations of the transfer switch. So we suspect it should last no more than 4 to 5 hours, and we have full redundancy in the data center to take care of the telephone systems, even though some are still in the old telephono, and then voice over IP will still be operational, number one. The second generator is for the fire life safety. When we can bring that in is on March 10th and the 11th. It's a little more difficult of a process because we have to remove the existing transfer switches, but we have a game plan for that as well. So that's where we're at. All the devices are on site, sitting on the ground. So that's when we suspect that'll happen. Now, Graystale Generators, we have that. We should have it on the street, waiting for final confirmation from the electrical engineer, hopefully by the end of next week. So that's a good thing. We've also been in contact with all the generator manufacturers to give them a heads up, and just hopefully the same situation as the generators that were purchased here. They came in about 30–40% of retail cost, so which was good. So where we are right now, what we're going to do then also twofold is we're moving the existing switchgear from that was sitting in the floodplain up above towards the voter building. That's number one. And what we're also going to do is bring in a commissioning agent whom I've used in the past. They were originally part of HP, so they're going to be brought in by the electrical engineer to confirm we have correct operational procedures and all the electric is done correctly per the design. So those people will be on site for probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. That's a good thing. So that's where we are.
Okay. Any questions, Stan, on the generators? Or, either, but especially probably Gracedale?
I just wanted to get a clarification on the time frame on the Gracedale ones.
Gracedale and Time ones, we should, if it comes out to public purchase by the end of next week, 30 days on the street, submittals back and forth with the generator manufacturers along with the electrical engineer and whomever the electrician will be. Could be about 30 days, and I've heard now that anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks for the generators to come in, so that we're looking at middle of Q3 prior to when we're going to need to have full heating system in place. So
you're talking August, September.
Yeah, well, October. Yeah. Actually, September, October.
September, October.
Yeah, that's when we're planning. This is where we have the least amount of power consumption also to the campus.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Anything else? Stan, want to talk to us about bridges? How about if you go to the bridges that were on the 2013 bond?
Okay. Bridge 103 and 187 were completed on Lower Nazareth Township. That is done. We had some change orders that we had to work through with the engineer, and so we're working through them right now. We didn't pay them in full yet, and so we're working through those that system. Bridge 102 is under construction.
No, that's not 2013 bond, though, money.
Bridge 102, yes.
It is.
Yes, it's bridge is 2013. However, we're getting reimbursements back from the state.
Well, yeah, that's what I was, okay.
We're
Okay.
getting 80, 15, and 5. 5% is our cost.
Mhm.
So we're moving along with that. Actually, in 2 weeks, I'm going out to, along with that, going out to Harrisburg with meet with Norfolk and Southern on that bridge and some other, we have another bridge that I'm going to be talking to them as well, plus the Rails Trail, so just bringing that up as you were mentioning before.
Mhm.
So that's where we are now.
So that bridge on Georgetown Road, do you have any idea when that's going to be?
May, June.
Okay.
Yeah, the township understands because of the underground stream that they found in all the concrete grouting they're putting in. It's just unbelievable. It's just, as PennDOT says to me, welcome to the wonderful world of bridge building, and it's so sad. It's just what happens. It's what you encounter in a karst area.
Yeah.
Limestone, sinkholes.
Yeah, when they opened
You've
up,
seen it first-
when they
firsthand.
opened up the two bridges on Steuben Road, I went with Stan for that, and then we went down and saw the bridge on Georgetown, and it is pretty impressive what they have to do just to get to the point that they could actually do the work. As far as the channeling and everything they do with the creek, that was like very neat.
I actually have, I have a picture here of the latest from this past week, and I'll pass it around to everyone. But it is, if you can see how the people are working, it was 20 degrees out, and having to make sure the ready-mix plants are open, and kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
While you're doing that, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
May I ask you a question?
You may ask a
Okay,
question.
thank you. Since the weather's, it's seasonably warm, okay?
Unseasonably warm.
Unseasonably warm, okay?
Unseasonably.
But there is no global warming. But it's unseasonably warm. Will we find out if they can move, the schedule might be moved ahead by working on things?
Oh, we're doing that. We haven't
Okay.
stopped. We haven't stopped.
So it has,
construction
that's in place ready?
You understand?
I'll pass that over.
We haven't stopped construction at the least. We just kept right on going like it has.
Yeah.
It was this fall. So.
Okay, Stan, continue with 213 bond bridges.
Okay, Bridge 213, what you call it the Turtle Bridge,
Mhm.
it's slated for replacement next year. Well, I'm sorry, 2017, we had an issue with one of the landowners is the right-of-way. He didn't want to participate. So we're probably going to go through the right of condemnation. And that's going to be an interesting process. We had, Dan O'Donnell has sent him 2 letters. We have sent him numerous letters, the township. And actually, I was there one day when I saw the gentleman, and township manager said, his name is Petrucci, he said, please don't go there without officers, and please bring 2. So that's what we're facing. That's Bridge 213.
Mhm.
Everyone else is signed, and so it's this heartache we find. Bridge 31, we all know Bridge 31, and actually there's a dialogue a little bit, and some of there are P3 bridges in that township, so we're moving right along. I don't know what's happening. We just know what we have on our agenda. Those are the bridges.
Okay. How about that bridge that wasn't a 2013 bond, but it's always one that I looked at because it's such in a main area. The one on Main Street, Northampton.
That's completed.
That's completed.
That's
okay.
completed. That was Bridge 125. Bridge 160, that was the other one of the repairs. That'll start March 1st.
Okay.
There's very little asphalt work we need to do, so and when we do have it, the ambient temperature will be sufficient that we can pave.
Okay. And now we're not in this discussion right now. We've not talked about, and I don't plan to bring it up. We've not talked about the P3 bridges.
Okay.
And unless my take is that that's being handled by the GPA, and I'm not going to introduce it here.
Go ahead.
Do you have a comment,
No.
Mr. Warner?
No.
Please.
Go ahead. You go first.
Are we within our right to ask for updates?
Yeah, and through the GPA, we will provide timely updates, periodic updates, as some of the people have mentioned. So when when we move forward, we'll provide periodic updates in terms of status. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You often say that as a councilman, there are very few questions I can ask and get an answer to. There are some personnel kind of things like that, but this certainly would be under that realm. But right now, with the P3 project, since I'm up to speed on it, I don't think that this body is going to be doing the oversight of that.
No, but there'll be sufficient information provided to keep you abreast of
That's my idea.
where they are.
Yeah.
But since the item was mentioned, I will inform this body that the contracts between the GPA and Krieger's Construction were completed last week. I think Thursday they signed off on the final documents. The deed transfers were completed moving forward, so that all of that paperwork then has now been current. So that project is now a go, and they're moving forward accordingly. And then, as I said, GPA will be providing updates as they progress.
Yeah. Okay. The Melitus building, Stan. What's on that?
We've engaged engineers to give us an assessment of the property, not only to the structure, but also to the surrounding areas we discussed before. So I suspect we'll have that in the next week or two. So we'll be able to report back into the next. Absolutely.
And the garage is completely done.
The garage is completed. What we did was we undertook on our own because of the cost. We relamped the facility. The contractor wanted $147,000 before change orders. We did it internally for about $50,000, and that also is we received a rebate of about $32,000 from Med-Ed, which went right into the general fund then because we converted to LEDs. And then from there, we're going to have 80% savings in our.
And the last thing, not the last thing, but one thing that's on my mind is the steps on
7th Street.
Yes.
They came in well over bid at $260,000. We had $50,000 allocated. It was just crazy because there was one bidder. So he thought. So it's step replacement. It's out for bid as we speak. It's already in public purchase.
Does that include the road leading up to the prison?
Oh, the goat path. No, that's
Yeah.
another. That's part of the jail process.
Okay.
That'll be the goat path.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Stan?
I'm just looking at the projects we approved for this year. Maybe you could, give us a timetable.
Sure.
The courthouse parking deck and the parking lot and crosswalks, we budgeted $750,000 in 2017. Do you have a timetable when that's going out for bid, or?
If you're looking, it's the rolled parking lot and crosswalks. We had $500,000. Parking deck repairs, we had $1 million. We have actually encumbered $135,000 for 5/6. We have $341,002 now. Part of that money we are going to use for the walkway. So we have specs already for that, and we're going to advertise probably within, I would say by the end of the month to the beginning of the following month. We have a lot. So with that being said, and if things are happening the way they are, hopefully we get it done sometime summer.
Okay. And then similarly, Gracedale parking lots, that's just a continuation of last year.
That is correct. And so what we did in administration's help is instead of going out for a 3-year process, because the numbers came in so nicely in year 1, we are going to advertise for the entire parking lot. And we looked at the drawings the other day, Landon and I and Dave Kasler and Matt Yankovi up in Gracedale. So hopefully that's out to bid shortly, so we get a jump on this season.
Okay. Then there are some small ones that we approved for the jail, security, kitchen flooring, shower
Yes.
and bath. Do you anticipate moving the RFPs forward soon?
Absolutely. We actually, kitchen flooring, we have an RFP for the engineering we're finishing now, along with the showers. There's 11 in total. Cameras is $160,000, and we spent $160,000 in the previous year of 2016. So what we did was we bundled them. So we're just waiting for the parts to come in for 17. So that's done. Improvements, we have $275,000. We're going to work with Dan and his team to understand what is definitely necessary there. Paving as well, that's $78,535 is designated for the GO path. So that GO path was similarly discussed before. It's for access, fire truck access up to the rotunda in the front of the building. So that's where we are now.
Okay. These are more public works projects, but the barn and the Louise Moore Pine.
We've actually been out at the barn. We have $150,000 allocated to that, and we will go out for an RFP for an architect to help us design that. We have some ideas we're kicking around in terms of how to do it and what we should do.
Yeah, because I think at some point there was a plan to build a new one out there.
There
I
was.
guess.
If where the barn is between the barn and Tom Culver's building,
Mhm.
then to the left where the goat, or what did they call that? Pig barn, if you remember that word. And but it's sat in a very low-lying area.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't too feasible.
And the Louise Moore Pine home conversion,
Well,
how's that going?
We had a pre-construction walkthrough with 15 contractors today.
Wow.
Yeah, 15 people. GCs, electric, and mechanicals.
And the bidding?
We suspect, I haven't marked, hopefully if it all comes, that the second meeting of February, we're going to be able to, let me just check my calendar real quick. February 15th, hopefully come to council 15th. Actually, the finance company first, and John will sign off. Hopefully we'll have that by the 15th, because we want to have Penn State Ag in as quick as possible. We have put a timetable of about 120 days. Force majeure in place, though. You never know.
Okay. I think those are my questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John. Anybody else?
Just, if I may.
Absolutely.
And I don't think, Stan, you have, I think this has to do with Mr. Hunter and Mr. Barron, and I don't know if they can answer the question, so you'd be happy to, you did your job. You don't have to even get up. The question did come up about the ATM cards for Gracedale. They were asked a few months back about when they were going to happen. We were told they were going to happen, and then it came up, and it's.
I don't think they're ATM card and ATM machine.
No, the machines are there. But yes, the ATM machine needs to be there. It's not there yet.
Question for Human Services.
Oh, yeah, but that was asked in October of 2016.
You mean for residents?
Yes.
I would audit it when it's in there.
I don't know why Mr. Barron.
Not me.
Oh, I think you need to.
We were working on it, and
Okay.
he said we have to put out an order.
Okay, I think they called, maybe they did call you and Jim. Somebody did, and you? Did they call you? No? Okay. End of question. As long as it's gonna come up, so
Just
everybody's aware of it.
so I understand what I have on my list to keep track of. This is not one that I've.
No,
kept
it's
track
not
of
on yours,
yeah.
no. I'm out of
But I
bounds.
thought, well, I missed something there.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion,
Yeah.
tomorrow during the Human Services Committee meeting, the folks from Graystale will be here. I think that might be better addressed to them.
Those from Gracedale really don't have anything to do with it, Mr. Kuzak. It's more fiscal and administration.
That's why I was thinking it was Mr. Hunter and
Oh.
because it has to do with it has to be funded.
Well, I'm not familiar with this. Then could you give us some background?
Sorry, didn't mean to do this. Kind of stepped out of bounds here. Sorry. Apologize to council.
So that's okay. What it
didn't
is
go well
they are looking at putting in a credit card thing at the cafeteria is how this all started. Now, in administration, we're looking at third-party credit card machines being put in so that we are not picking up the liability. That takes a little longer, and we're looking for a third-party company to do that. In the meantime, I had said, why don't we put in an ATM machine where they can pull their cash out and pay that way, and that was okayed by Gracedale, the people at the Gracedale meeting, the cafeteria, and the, I guess the Jim, the president of the board?
The advisory
The
board,
advisory
so-
board. So they had no problem with that. But the thing of it is that in dealing, Jim and I are dealing with, we have Lafayette Ambassador has one here, but we're not sure if we can just get them, he had gotten prices, so it was kind of like procurement was saying, well, we may have to RFP this. We can't just give it to them. So we have to figure out what the bottom line is. And with the holidays in the mix and whatnot, I did not get a chance to do that. So I do apologize, Mr. Warner, and
No apology
we will
necessary.
take care of that.
They just want an update for if it's possible.
That's
And it was
fine.
I wasn't sure where it fell under operations or not, so
That's
I have to
fine. No,
apologize to
that's-
Hayden. That's
I'm Okay. Is there any more questions on the ATM/credit card situation at Graysdale? Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, items? Move to adjourn the meeting. Meeting's adjourned.
He's just passing these around.
Okay, so what is the password for the?
Doesn't matter. How many meetings we have? Sure. Well, 19th, okay.
That's odd.
So I'll get home.